when my legitimate sister got married. She insisted I accompany her as a dowry maid. The heir will definitely take concubines in the future. I would rather it be you, my sister. To serve him together with me. I did not agree and directly refused, claiming I only wanted to marry into an ordinary family as a legal wife. My sister calmly replied, if you are unwilling, then let it be. But who could have known? Someone would actually kidnap me and sell me into the dirtiest and lowest class brothel. Since you refuse to properly be a noble concubine, then go be a plaything for thousands. I was abused to death. I was reborn back to the day my sister asked me come with me and marry into the estate. The heir will definitely take concubines in the future. I would rather it be you, my sister, to serve him together with me. My sister wore her usual hypocritical smile, but I was trembling all over. It has been too long since I heard this. Hearing it again, I still hate her so much that I grind my teeth. I was tormented to death in that brothel, trampled by thousands of men. In my desperate desire to survive, at that time, I knelt beneath others, listening to their insulting words, deep down, barely lingering on with my last breath, and hating my sister was the only obsession that kept me going. But in the end, I still died while she remained the lofty miss of the Zhang family, the heir's consort. I hated her so much my whole body trembled, almost revealing my vicious face. I firmly clenched my hands, although my limbs were already numb. But that real pain makes me certain I am not dreaming. Perhaps seeing me not answer for a long time, my sister asked again, sister, are you not willing to serve in the bedchamber? Sister is joking. I calmed myself down, but my heart felt waves of coldness. In my previous life, I actually believed her and directly refused, claiming I only wanted to marry into an ordinary family as a legal wife. Zhang Jin smiled and said, if you are unwilling, then let it be. She wasn't angry at all. Instead, the legitimate mother beside her glared at me fiercely, thinking I simply didn't know what was good for me. I thought this matter would just end here. I even ran around helping Zhang Jin prepare for her wedding. Who would have thought? On the day of her grand wedding, I was actually knocked unconscious and sold into the dirtiest. Brothel, the madam took the purse of silver, weighed it, and looked at me with eyes full of mockery. The young miss ordered, since you refuse to properly be a noble concubine, then go be a plaything for thousands. Then I fell into the abyss. In the end, on my deathbed, I even heard the madam saying, had you known this day would come, why not go be a noble concubine? Wouldn't you still be able to step on a legal wife's head? Instead of ending up like this, look at you now. Before my eyes is her face. I said, sister is doing this for my own good. My continuous refusal was actually rude of me. I will leave everything for you to decide, sister. Zhang Jin smiled in satisfaction, the corner of her lips curling into a smirk. If in my past life I didn't notice it, now I do understand. If I agree, she will spare my life, because this legitimate sister of mine is a true venomous beauty. She must have everything under her control, in her own hands. In my previous life, it was exactly because of this personality. She even wanted me to be a bedmaid. The me in my past life really had no chance to outsmart her. Truly stupid. She calculated every step, scheming and thinking it was flawless. But she probably never expected that this is my rebirth. Now, I will make her completely ruined and pay the price for my past life. Even though I agreed to follow her into the estate, a concubine has no right to hold a wedding, even the legitimate mother. And Zhang Jin merely said, a concubine-born daughter marrying as a dowry maid naturally doesn't need to be publicized. It also saves everyone the trouble. Looking at Zhang Jin with eyes full of gratification, it is still Jinner who is sensible. If she has any misbehavior in the future, just punish her as you please. Only the Zhang family and you matter. She is nothing, the two of them right in front of my face, completely disregarding my lowly feelings. I didn't show the slightest displeasure. My birth mother died early. Were it not for the legitimate mother's hypocrisy, I probably wouldn't have survived to adulthood in the estate. Only I know clearly in my heart, although looking glamorous on the outside, concubine-born daughters secretly suffer no shortage of abuse. Zhang Jin is a pampered noble lady of the Zhang family. zither chess, calligraphy, and painting. She is proficient in everything. Since childhood, she gathered thousands of doting upon herself, loved by elder brothers, valued by father, and cared for in every way by mother. But she also happens to have a calm and grand personality. Many noble ladies are willing to befriend her, treating her as a role model. In her past life, she married into the Marquis estate as she wished, and respected the heir like a guest, frequenting various banquets with unmatched glory. While I was in that brothel, every day, I suffered endless beating and cursing from others. Right before I died, I heard the heir took in a new noble concubine, which provoked my legitimate sister so much that she absolutely could not tolerate her. In her eyes, any useless servant or object to her is all trash. Living again in this life, I will definitely let her see how she gets trampled by lowly people underfoot. Zhang Jin's pre-wedding chores were assigned to me long ago. According to my legitimate sister, those assigned old maidservants are not as attentive as me, her sister. Outsiders only say we have a deep sisterly bond. Little do they know, this time I am reborn. My legitimate sister would never have expected that I have this capability. Taking advantage of helping Zhang Jin prepare things, I bribed the servants. In my past life, even when living a life worse than death in the brothel, it also allowed me to find out some information. Among them, the most talked about was the heir's mistress. Rumor has it she was just an orphan girl who accidentally saved the heir. From then on, the heir kept her in a private residence. It's a pity that parents' commands the heir couldn't disobey the Marquis' orders and married a socially matching Zhang Jin less than a year after their marriage. He brought the person into the estate. That girl is also not an easy target, unexpectedly able to make the heir publicly defend her. People in the capital treated it as a joke, thinking that girl, but seeing until the end, that woman lived comfortably. Not only that, she even gave birth to a son and became pregnant. Rumor has it this is also why she was able to enter the Marquis estate. Calculating the time, right now, that orphan girl must already be pregnant. Just as I returned, Zhang Jin's personal maid Qi hurried over and dragged me to Zhang Jin's courtyard. When I arrived, Zhang Jin was applying makeup in front of the mirror. Zhang Jin knew I was there, but ignored me, leaving me hanging aside, making me stand there for a full half an hour before she finally turned her face. Upon seeing me, she feigned surprise. "Oh, when did sister arrive? Why are you just standing there without making a sound?" Watching me apply makeup so intently that I didn't even notice you. A room full of maids. She was clearly using this excuse to humiliate me on purpose. I forced down the hatred in my heart, and just like usual, it was because I didn't dare to make a sound and disturb sister. Zhang Jin stared at me for a moment, then suddenly let out a cold sneer. "Speak these past 2 days. What exactly have you been up to?" My expression remained unchanged, but my heart skipped a beat. Zhang Jin's desire for control is terrifyingly strong. She is not stupid. On the contrary, she is extremely clever at casual investigation. But I had already prepared a countermeasure long ago. Sister, I went to help organize a purchasing list. I looked up timidly and submissively, acting completely guilty in my demeanor. Zhang Jin narrowed her eyes at me contemptuously. "Jinner, you have always been an obedient one. That's why you can stay by my side. Are you clear staying by my side?" This is what Zhang Jin always says every time she intimidates me. She deliberately indulges my dependence on her to make me bare my heart to her. In my past life, I truly thought she was a good sister I could talk to about anything. In reality, she merely wanted me to expose my fatal weakness, could crush me at will. I fell to my knees with a thud, crying, and begged for mercy. "Sister, I was wrong. I just heard some passing gossip, which is why I came late." Zhang Jin indeed fell for the trap, asking what I heard. I hesitated again and again before speaking. "A few days ago, probably because I was happy for sister marrying into the Marquis estate. I was too excited to sleep all night. After keeping busy with sister's grand wedding, I went on a trip to the clinic. I heard the doctor inside say he was invited to a private residence by the heir. That residence seems to be the heir's. To tell you the truth, when I was picking up medicine, during this time, I would dream of my past life, being humiliated, scenes, looking again at Zhang Jin's smug face. I hate her even more. As for what the doctor said, since it's a private residence, how would he dare to determine it was the heirs in the capital. Altogether, there are only. One is already married, and the other one is Zhou Rong. Listening to me speaking, Zhang Jin frowned tightly, as if calculating something. I knew. She had already become suspicious. Ordering people to investigate that residence, hiding who exactly. Then she had someone reward me with 2 taels of silver. I smiled and accepted the order, deliberately dawdling. A few days later, I then feigned hesitation, telling her what I found out. All at once, I heard that person seems to be the canary Zhou Rong keeps outside, and is even pregnant with his flesh and blood. Zhang Jin was so furious she ruthlessly smashed the teacup onto the ground. And at this time, the time until her wedding with Zhou Rong, with only 3 days left, Zhang Jin has never, in front of servants, smashed a teacup to vent her anger. From the corridor, I could still hear her cold and gloomy, since she likes being a mistress who can't see the light of day. Then so be it. I was planning to continue eavesdropping, but unexpectedly, Q1 pushed the door open and came out seeing me. Although slightly surprised, she expressionlessly grabbed my hand and dragged me towards the back mountain. You did it on purpose, didn't you? You knew about it long ago. Q1 short. Few words were practically seeing right through me. Eldest miss. Will she also see through my mind? Q1 gave a cold sneer. She won't. Being so arrogant. How could she ever expect you? The surroundings were dim. I couldn't quite see Q1's. In my memory, the other party has always been Zhang Jin's handest blade. She is also the most venomous. Second miss, what you want to do is the same as me. Let's just join hands. I didn't rush to deny it, nor did I immediately agree that night. Waking up from dreams of my past life, I suddenly remembered Qiuhuan had no choice to make Qiuhuan desperately loyal to her. Zhang Jin married off her only sister into the estate to a seemingly honest manager. She wholeheartedly helped Zhang Jin arrange this. But she was terribly wrong. The honesty was just a facade. Deep down he was a wife beater. Qiuhuan's sister had a cowardly nature and silently endured everything. It wasn't until her sister lost her life that Qiuhuan knew. She initially thought she was the one who was blind. Who would have thought? It turns out the legitimate sister knew all along, recalling all the past events. I can now finally understand that Zhang Jin's viciousness has long been carved into her bones. Afterwards, I never had the chance to talk to Qiuhuan again, serving her. When she went to pick out jewelry, she picked and chose but found nothing pleasing to the eye. Eventually, her gaze fell upon me. Did you find out clearly where that private residence is? Zhang Jin asked. I suddenly realized why in my past life right after the wedding vows, she sent someone to drug me and sell me into a brothel. Actually, in my past life, Zhang Jin did come to visit me once. It was truly hard to imagine that someone as proud and noble as Zhang Jin would also visit that lowly brothel. I still remember when she saw me lying on the ground, unable to live and unable to die, she frowned and covered her nose and mouth, unconcealed disgust in her eyes. Had you known today, why didn't you follow my wishes back then and suffer like this on that very day? I had just been abused by a John who had left, whipping my flesh to pieces with a steel whip. I really wanted to crawl up and perish together with her. She seemed to have really just come to look. But after she left, the customers who entered my room, one after another without exception, were all perverts with cruel methods. The festering wounds on my body never scabbed over, grew maggots, and reeked until the moment I breathed my last. They accompanied me for half my life. Coming back to my senses, listening to Zhang Jin's obviously anxious questioning, I lowered my head, my long eyelashes hiding the smile in my eyes. I know it. Sister, how could I not know? I deliberately timed it perfectly, accurately calculating Zhang Jin's temper to make it impossible for her to back out of the marriage, while still having time to cause trouble for that mistress. The residence Zhou Rong bought for Li King is easy to find, but not easy to enter. The surrounding scenery was elegant with a few stone steps. Unexpectedly, the courtyard gate was wide open. Looking inside, one could even see a swing under the tree in the courtyard. Sweeping a glance, one could easily tell that for this residence, the bear had put in a lot of effort. Qiuhuan and I exchanged a glance and successively looked at Zhang Jin. As expected, Zhang Jin's face was frighteningly pale. Without waiting to knock, the people inside came out. Upon seeing me, that old woman's expression immediately changed. Who might you be? Zhang Jin smiled mockingly, pushing the old woman aside. She directly shoved people out of the way to force her way in. This was my first time seeing the rumored orphan girl, Li Qing's. Compared to what I had imagined, she was completely different. Rumors said she was a hunter's daughter, vulgar and unrefined. But as I carefully observed, she rather looked like she came from the picturesque Yangnan. Gentle, yet not appearing fragile, like a resilient reed. The moment she opened her mouth, it rather surprised me a bit. Looking at your aura, you must be a young lady from some prestigious family. How could you do such a thing as forcefully occupying a commoner's house? She spoke without leaving any face at all, looking up and down, examining Zhang Jin with this look of yours. You look more like you're here to catch an adulterer. Could it be that you are that miss of the Zhang family? It seemed Li Qing had long heard of Zhang Jin. Not avoiding suspicion at all, she was born extremely beautiful. A man having 3 wives and 4 concubines is already commonplace. I just met the heir earlier than you did. Zhang Jin was trembling with anger, her facial features slightly twisted. With great difficulty she suppressed her anger and pointed directly at her shameless. Does shame put food on the table? That's for you. Self-proclaimed, extraordinarily noble ones. Need it. People like us for whom just surviving is difficult. How could we care about such things? Zhang Jin's brows were filled with gloom. The gaze she cast towards Li Qing held contempt and disgust, but even more so a jealousy she herself didn't realize. Li Qing was impervious to both soft and hard tactics, and Zhang Jin was definitely not the kind of person who would make a move in broad daylight. When things reached a stalemate, I caught a glimpse of Li Qing's gaze pausing on me for a moment, then smilingly moving away. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Zhang Jin bared her fangs for the first time. Li Qing laughed. Li Qing said, I am now pregnant with the heir's flesh and blood. If I die, would your Marquis, Madam Beautiful dreams still exist? You have been scheming for a long time. Can you bear to let it go? Just like that. Facts proved. Zhang Jin couldn't bear to. When we were leaving, the Zhang family's carriage ran straight into Zhou Rong. Zhou Rong's expression changed drastically. After realizing Zhang Jin didn't react much, he impatiently squeezed into the courtyard. Zhang Jin froze. I knew she understood. That open door was left for Zhou Rong. The carriage hadn't gone far. Faintly, we could hear voices from inside. Your fiancé has come knocking on the door. Look at the trouble you've caused. King, I was wrong. Just hit me lightly to vent your anger. Don't upset the fetus. I will protect you. The two were flirting, sounding deeply in love. A vicious look flashed across Zhang Jin's face. Instead, she dug her nails into her palms until they bled. Only when getting off the carriage did her face return to its usual dignified elegance. All emotions vanished without a trace. Upon returning to the estate, Zhang Jin's gaze swept over Qiuhuan and I. Do you guys think the heir would break the marriage contract for her? Qiuhuan and I exchanged glances and secretly laughed. That woman's family background is low. She will definitely not enter, as long as you are respected as the Marquis estate's main wife. Doesn't sister still have the final say? Zhang Jin stared blankly, as if pondering over it. I responded with a smile. Although not explicitly stated, sister's scheming. Zhang Jin smiled with satisfaction. I don't hope that when my child is born in the future, there is someone pressing down on their head. My child must be the only one. As for future lessons, I lowered my eyelids. The trick of borrowing a knife to kill someone, Zhang Jin has always played it to perfection. Even if it gets found out later, couldn't she just pin the blame on my head? But as fate would have it, I just went along with her wishes. The wedding proceeded as scheduled, held with the identity of a dowry maid. I followed Zhang into the estate. If we talk about the only difference from an ordinary servant girl, it's probably that I have a remote room in a courtyard and the title of a noble concubine without real name or status, completely opposite to my past life. Li Qing was actually brought into the estate ahead of time. On the night of the wedding, Zhang Jin was so furious she smashed newly bought things. Early the next morning, she still had to endure the servants' gossiping and whispering gazes to go pay respects to the madam. Zhou Rong seemed certain that Zhang Jin wouldn't dare fall out with him. Spending most of his days lounging in Li Qing's courtyard, Zhang Jin was going crazy. Sister needn't worry that Li Qing is just relying on being pregnant. If that child cannot be kept, I said softly, but Zhang Jin's face was full of, Sister, the task you assigned to me, I'm afraid I cannot accomplish it. The ear has sent people to guard outside Li Qing's room. I really have no way. Zhang Jin slapped me across the face. Taking advantage of the momentum, I felt a prescription dropped from my sleeve. What is this? Zhang Jin picked up the prescription faster than I could. I anxiously tried to snatch it back, but was kicked away by her sister. Although this prescription can help one conceive, it is ultimately extremely damaging to the body. Zhang Jin hesitated slightly. He once spoke from the side. If it really damages the body, then how did she get it? I stammered and couldn't answer. He Huan relentlessly pursued. I see you just want to keep it for yourself. Moreover, Miss has many famous doctors around her. Even if something goes wrong, it won't be a major issue. Instead, you are hiding it. Could it be you want to elevate your status through a child having said that? Zhang Jin glared at me suspiciously. I pointed to the sky and swore. Jinner was just worried about sister. I rely entirely on sister to survive. How would I dare to think about competing for any status since sister didn't listen to me? Zhang Jin's expression softened. She gave me a fleeting glance. All right, I won't punish you this time. Thank you. I secretly smiled in my heart. Coincidentally, since Zhang Jin started taking the medicine, it wasn't long before Li Qing and Zhou Rong had a big fight. Zhang Jin was extremely happy, learning that I caused the trouble. She even rewarded me with 10. The next day, carrying the 10 taels of silver, I bought many supplements and secretly went to see Li Qing's. Zhang Jin probably doesn't know. Since the first time I met Li Qing's, I had secretly contacted her. I have never seen such a transparent woman like her, as if just to experience the human world. Even knowing she can only be a mistress, Li Qing doesn't mind at all, without the slightest bit of greed or attachment. Knowing Zhang Jin intends to harm her, she also, when I asked if the heir doesn't love her, what she would do, Li Qing laughed heartily. Living anywhere is still living. Why must I have a man's love? It's Zhou Rong who can't leave me, not me who can't leave him. He trapped me. He doesn't even have the courage to rebel against his elders. Why would I like such a coward? Really? I would definitely run away without looking back. Getting to know such an extraordinary person is truly amazing. Being so sensible. No wonder in my past life, she could step all over Zhang Jin. I couldn't bear to harm her. Nor did I expect her to ally with me, but when she was seeing me off, seeing me trembling all over from being harassed by a scoundrel, she casually guessed that I must have suffered immense torment and actually volunteered to lend me a hand beating up that scoundrel. Every step after that was planned together by us. 向来以端庄大方示人，绝技做不出那种谄媚的事。唯有我和秋娟道这是千载难逢的时机时，他才羞恼地学着那些勾栏的把戏。早前我问过李清哥，若周荣当真宿在了江锦的房里，不会心冷吗？我只记得当时李清哥冷冷一笑，相信男人的鬼话是会一辈子都遭殃。而现在看着江锦为了争宠， 忍着羞耻，冲着他最瞧不起的昌门手段效仿时，我眼里数不清的快意。可这样还不够，我要让江锦一步一步将自己逼入绝境。李清哥的刻意推让，果真让周荣动了歪心思。 Zhang Jin, who always showed herself as dignified and graceful, would absolutely never do such a thing. Only Qiu Huan and I knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Only then did she shamefully and angrily learn the tricks of those brothels. Before leaving, I asked Li Qing if Zhou Rong truly slept in Zhang Jin's room. Wouldn't your heart grow cold? I only remember Li Qing gave a cold laugh then. Believing a man's lies will bring a lifetime of disaster. And now, seeing Zhang Jin trying to compete, enduring the shame, using the courtesan tricks she despises the most. In my eyes, there is countless hatred. But this is still not enough. I want to push Zhang Jin step by step, driving herself into a dead end. Li King's deliberate yielding. In her eyes, she was happy to see it happen. Was it long before one blindly tolerates. Zhang Jin easily became pregnant when the news came out. Zhang was down on her more. Many supplements. Zhang Jin clearly understood this logic. For a while, Zhang Jin gritted her teeth and hated Li King's favor. Getting big if I don't even have thought of sacrificing the excuse of nurturing her pregnancy. Zhang Jin self-righteously withheld Li King's courtyard. Jin is right now. I can only rely on you. Had the bearing of a marquis. You understand. I am destined to be unable to give birth to this flesh. But Zhang Jin touched her belly, looking at me with calculation. She is a suspicious person, having someone check the prescription before brewing the medicine. Although knowing the fetus wouldn't survive past 3 months, Zhang Jin still drank it. And I am originally Zhou Rong's bedmaid. Li King and she are both pregnant. The only one who can serve him is me. Zhang Jin ordered people to forcefully pour a bowl of contraceptive soup down my throat and then gave me a good warning. Before sending me to Zhou Rong's bed, I should be glad that the current her would still warn me beforehand. If it were my past life, I'm afraid she would have unexpectedly. Zhou Rong did not touch me. This was within Zhang Jin's expectations. He really cares about that vixen. This was originally Zhang Jin's test. After this incident, Zhang Jin seemed to have fully grasped Zhou Rong's bottom line. Towards Li King's, she knew she couldn't outcompete Li King for favor, but every time she heard from the other courtyard rumors of the two being lovey-dovey, she would still be jealous. Zhang Jin isn't afraid Zhou Rong doesn't love her. Her calculation is clear that is to be the Marquis' main mother, not tolerating a single mishap. And Zhou Rong's partiality to Li King and the existence of the flesh in her belly gave Zhang Jin a sense of crisis. She can't torture me like in my past life. And it's no time to drag Li King to death yet. She could make the other party suffer Zhou Rong's disgust. And an excellent opportunity would be the Marquis's birthday banquet a few days later. As the main wife, Zhang Jin would inevitably have to organize the banquet, welcoming and sending off guests. The tricks she could play in this couldn't be easier for her on the day of the banquet. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Li King unexpectedly broke out in a red rash all over and abruptly left the table. Zhou Rong panicked and couldn't care less about decency. Chasing after her, he picked her up and shouted for the estate doctor. Everyone's eyes fell upon Zhang Jin and the main mother's faces. The main mother's face was dark. Seeing Zhang Jin methodically calm the commotion, her expression softened. Only Qiuhuan and I exchanged a glance. Li King being allergic to osmanthus was no secret. I had also warned her long ago. Since Zhang Jin dared to pull this stunt at the banquet, she naturally had prepared excuses early on. I just absolutely never expected Li King to still fall for it. Half a day later, I heard the main mother was furious and reprimanded Zhou Rong for favoring a concubine and neglecting his wife. After speaking, she also punished Li King to reflect on her mistakes behind closed doors, saying since her body is unwell, she might as well stay quietly in her courtyard and nurture her pregnancy. And the reason why the Marquis's wife was so furious was naturally because she couldn't find the evidence of what caused Li King's allergy and was made a laughingstock for nothing. She didn't like Li King in the first place, and when the doctor found out she was pregnant with a girl, and Zhang Jin was pregnant with a boy, she despised her even more. But this time Li King truly suffered. The doctors all said there was a risk of miscarriage. Zhou Rong had a big fight with the Marquis's wife, and naturally vented his anger on Zhang Jin. But ironically, Zhang Jin not only sent many supplements to Li King's, but also visited her personally. In the end, it was concluded that Li King must have carelessly sat under an osmanthus tree. When I went to see Li King's, her face was covered in red rashes. I couldn't figure out her thoughts, making one shudder with fear. Seeing me, Li King let out a laugh. Zhang Jin's calculating every step can't be said to not be profound. Only then did I understand. It turned out Li King was on guard, not touching anything at the banquet, but still falling for Zhang Jin's trick. Is your body all right? I looked at her with some hesitation, as if compared to before, the current Li King was extremely weak. Looking as if her days were numbered, Li King seemed to know what I was thinking. My body is fine. It's just Zhou Rong, who is probably left with only one last breath. Is he dying? Watching Li King nod, I couldn't help but stand up, greatly shocked in my heart. Wrong. Everything was wrong. When returning, I happened to bump into Qiuhuan coming out of Zhang Jin's room. Miss doesn't know her. In the past, if you knew they were colluding together, she absolutely wouldn't have involved you. I sneered in my heart, living a new life. I was ultimately still too impatient. With just a few words, I believed her. Because Li King had injuries on her face and a stubborn temper, Zhang Jin only provoked a few words, and Zhou Rong became alienated from her. Zhang Jin enjoyed watching her make a fool of herself. When we arrived, Li King was swinging on the swing. Exactly the same as the one in that courtyard back then. Zhang Jin walked gracefully over, smiling meaningfully, sister looking like this. Now, I didn't expect you still have the leisure to swing. Aren't you ashamed? The servants nearby chuckled softly. Li King rolled her eyes at her, suffering torture and wailing. Wasn't that caused by you too? Zhang Jin snorted coldly. Speaking nonsense. Who would believe it? I am a legitimate eldest daughter of the Zhang family. Do you think the Marquis will favor me? Or favor an orphan girl who is completely worthless to him? Li King looked up at Zhang Jin and suddenly smiled. You don't know, do you? Actually, before me, another woman used to live in this courtyard. That very night, Zhang Jin returned making a fuss about stomach pain. The Marquis estate was brightly lit. The heir's wife, this is poisoning. Search for me. Eventually, suspicion fell on Li King's. Li King was brought in, still maintaining her stunning appearance. Qi Huan and I knelt on the other side, watching the people around her search out a packet of. It must be this medicinal powder that caused the harm. King is absolutely not this kind of person. The Marquis's wife looked at Li King's. Li King, under the pleading gaze of the other party, slapped her hand on the table. Where did this thing come from? Li King spoke bluntly. A few days ago, someone from the heir's wife slipped it to me. Qi Huan couldn't wait to step forward. Madam, a few days ago, the servant saw second Miss sneaking out of the courtyard at night and followed her all the way. The Marquis's wife's gaze fell on me, and hurriedly handed over a piece of paper. Madam, I am the sister of the heir's wife. How could I? Moreover, everyone knows I suffer from night blindness, and after speaking, I changed my tone. Qi Huan hurriedly stepping forward to bite back. It's truly too indicative of a guilty conscience. I have always been invisible in the estate. The Marquis's wife's suspicious gaze fell on Qi Huan, making people tremble at the sight. Li King, you tell us who that person is. Li King hesitated to speak, her gaze falling on Qi Huan. Zhang Jin was just about to say something when her expression suddenly changed dramatically. My stomach. Her face turned deathly pale, covered in cold sweat. The next second, she directly fainted from the pain. My gaze lightly swept over the aromatherapy. Qi Huan usually managed and smiled. If you ask what I saw most in the brothel in my past life, besides those vixen-like seduction methods, it would be the methods of inducing a miscarriage. The people in the room panicked. The Marquis's wife could only have someone press Qi Huan down. Only when she looked at me did she ponder for a moment and let me. As for Li King, she was taken back to his own courtyard by Zhou Rong after repeated guarantees. That very night, I went to see Qi Huan. When she saw me, she immediately sprang up from the ground. When did you find out? I stared at her and smiled. Since I could find out where Li King lived, do you think I wouldn't be able to find out about the relationship between you and your sister? You two are not on good terms at all. She was clearly forced by Zhang Jin to marry that manager. Qi Huan froze, then gave a sneer. I thought you were so smart. She looked at me deeply. Do you understand? If it weren't for you, the one accompanying Zhang Jin to marry into the Marquis estate should have been me. Now you are the one she suspects. Just wait. Since you work for her, then your indenture contract is also tightly held in Zhang Jin's hands, right? I couldn't help but ask, since you know her so well, why don't you think of a way she won't live past tonight? Can't you even manage this little thing? Why don't we join forces? Under the bright moonlight, I watched Qi Huan's eyes anxiously avert. Finally, she nodded. Returning to my own courtyard, I familiarly approached the few people beside Zhang Jin and gave them a few pointers. Zhang Jin has always been arrogant, looking down on those who are not her servants, so she forgot that sometimes money and power are not omnipotent. Mother Wang in the small kitchen, because she served the wrong food, was secretly ordered by her to have a leg broken. But she forgot the coachman who drove her carriage was Mother Wang's son. the guard on duty for Zhang Jin, because he glanced at her hair accessory one more time, was sold by her, but before being driven out of the estate. The other party had a seriously ill sister. Because of this, if I remember correctly, the sweeping maid in the courtyard had admired him for a long time, and they were about to get engaged. Zhang Jin's actions will only bring disaster upon herself. By the time Qiuhuan was released, it was already half a month later, and Zhang Jin's child was gone, while Li King remained completely unharmed. Qiuhuan took my place to step forward. When serving Zhang Jin, she was unsurprisingly slapped twice by the other party. Zhang Jin suffered such a huge ordeal for nothing. Naturally, she wouldn't let it go easily. Qiuhuan covered her face and cried, saying she didn't know, but was still mercilessly ordered by Zhang Jin to be dragged away. When seeing me, Qiuhuan reached out her hand, begging me to save her. I only glanced at her, then carrying the medicine bowl. Watched Zhang Jin swallow the medicine with my own eyes. I couldn't help but wait until she finished drinking to take the empty porcelain bowl. Zhang Jin suddenly spoke. I didn't expect you to be quite ruthless. I forced down the trembling in my hands and smiled. I presume it was also Zhang Jin who forced her to make a choice. Zhang Jin didn't take her life, only sold her off later. From then on, I never spoke a word again. The next time I saw Qiuhuan was a long time later. When I found her, she was crouching on the ground snatching food from a vicious dog. Coincidentally, Qiuhuan was locked up in a remote courtyard, but no one in the Marquis estate knew. If I hadn't heard in my past life that the Marquis estate's backyard had a female ghost wailing, Qiuhuan was visibly extremely agitated. I looked at her quietly. She suddenly froze, and after a long while gritted her teeth. Understood. I want to make Zhang Jin completely ruined and disgraced. That afternoon, Qiuhuan rushed all the way to the main courtyard and threw herself straight in front of the Marquis's wife. She had been with Zhang Jin for many years and knew the other party's viciousness very well, knowing a great deal of her dark secrets. And it just so happened that the Marquis's wife was hosting a tea party for various madams that day, chatting while Li King was serving on the side. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Qiuhuan just tore away all pretenses like this and completely exposed Zhang Jin's vicious true colors. By the time Zhang Jin rushed over, it was already too late. Zhang Jin, seeing everyone's gazes, especially Li King's provocation, couldn't care less about decency and forcefully stepped forward to cover Qiuhuan's mouth. The room fell into chaos. Zhang Jin is a ruthless character. With a violent jab, Qiuhuan crashed straight into Li King's belly. Li King immediately started bleeding. Everyone couldn't help but scream. Who knew Zhang Jin pulled a sharp blade from somewhere and right in front of everyone brutally stabbed Qiuhuan to death. The Marquis's wife, her face pale with anger, asked the guests to leave. Looking at Li King lying on the ground, she completely ignored her. It was Zhou Rong who heard the news of Li King's premature labor, and in anger slapped Zhang Jin twice and had her grounded. Zhang Jin's body was already weak after her miscarriage, and this confinement completely ruined her. Upon hearing that Li King gave birth to a son, she smashed the medicine bowl on the spot. I looked at the spilled medicine on the floor and shook my head. What a pity. But outwardly, I still comforted her. Sister, don't be upset. She is just a concubine. Even if she gave birth to the eldest son, he couldn't surpass you. At worst, couldn't he be recorded under your name? Let them. Deeply believing that Zhang Jin had listened to me, but not knowing that the estate doctor who came to take her pulse that day had already secretly told the Marquis's wife the fact that she could never be pregnant again. So when she went to snatch the child, the Marquis's wife pondered for a long time before agreeing. But after all, it is your flesh and blood. You must raise him well. The Marquis's wife stared fixedly at Zhang Jin, as if warning her. As soon as she returned, Zhang Jin flew into a rage. The child was said to be registered under Zhang Jin's name but was still raised by Li King's. When Zhang Jin realized this, she was extremely furious, and upon learning that she was completely infertile, she almost went mad. That night, Li King's courtyard caught fire. Some servants said they saw the heir's wife's figure. The Marquis's wife cried and wailed in anger. Zhou Rong was even more desperate to rush into the sea of fire when I carried the child and knelt before them crying. They both didn't make it out. If I hadn't gotten up to use the chamber pot, bumped into Zhang Jin. and found out she was actually setting the fire. I secretly sneaked in and managed to bring the young master out in time when saving people. Sister King is she. Zhou Rong gnashed his teeth in hatred. Where is Zhang Jin? Where is she? Search the estate. At this moment, the coachman knelt down to answer the heir. The heir's wife probably knew she caused a huge disaster. The Marquis's wife sent people to search the estate. Indeed, they didn't find her inside. Instead, they found that many of her valuables were missing. Gradually, the people in Zhang Jin's courtyard all became witnesses. The Marquis's family went directly to the Zhang family to question them. Upon learning that Zhang Jin didn't return there, they left a letter of divorce and let the matter drop. Only I stayed behind, looking at my body covered in wounds. The Marquis's wife sighed. You are indeed tasked to raise him well. What? Thank you, madam. I lowered my eyes, secretly resenting Li King's cold-bloodedness. She truly caught me off guard. Entrusting her child on her deathbed. If it weren't for her slipping Zhou Rong the sterilization drug, I would really have to think highly of her to pave the way for her own child. She truly resorted to any means necessary. Rather than being a concubine for a lifetime, it's better to live a free and easy life. If she hadn't used Zhang Jin to threaten me, I probably would have turned against her long ago. Fortunately, I lived a second life. For nothing else, but just to bring Zhang Jin down. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but laugh. She should be happy. My whole life is simply for revenge. I'm afraid everyone never expected that the once lofty legitimate eldest daughter of the Zhang family would also be like a lowly prostitute, begging for a living beneath men, returning once again to the place that used to be like a purgatory. My body still couldn't help but tremble. But when I saw Zhang Jin, I felt an extraordinary excitement. I ruined her face, poisoned her throat so she was mute, and broke her 4 limbs. I made her do the lowest. Things left to be played with by customers with twisted fetishes. Now no matter who stood in front of Zhang Jin, I'm afraid that they wouldn't recognize her. When I arrived, Zhang Jin had just finished serving a customer. Seeing me, she gritted her teeth wanting to pounce over. Clatter, clatter. But she couldn't move forward another step. It turned out an iron chain was locking her neck. I couldn't help but burst into loud laughter. Look, I didn't just become the heir's wife. I will also become the Marquis's wife. And you can only be the lowest prostitute. Zhang Jin kept struggling. With my foot stepping on her wound, she trembled in pain. I secretly applied force, watching her until she could no longer move. Before lifting my foot, I will make you live a life worse than death. I walked out of this purgatory. The sunlight outside was just right. After a few turns, a child threw himself at me. Mother, I found you. It's your turn to find me now. To make it flawless, I actually locked Zhang Jin in a pig pen for 2 years before selling her to the brothel. Returning, on the way, Zhou Rong and I treated each other with respect. The Marquis's wife was completely satisfied with me. I put on my own mask. The wounds on my body no longer hurt, but the scars will always be there. Perhaps in this lifetime, I will never be able to let it go, but in this life, I will absolutely live a carefree life.